In this video, I'll show you how to build a production-grade AI web agent that has access to web data and could scale to millions of users. We'll do this by using Python, Inngest, BrightData, and OpenAI, although you could replace a lot of these tools with other ones. And the point of this video is going to be to focus on scale. A lot of people build simple AI agents, but they fall apart when even a few hundred people try to use them. Here I'm going to show you the real tools that allow agents to actually scale to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users and requests, and handle things like caching, retries, fallback, scalable web scraping, and all of those things that never really get talked about on YouTube. This video is not designed for complete beginners. You should understand how to code in Python already, but all of the agentic features I, of course, will go over, and you'll see how to build something that scales, which is the whole point of this video. So with that said, let's get into it. Let me give you a quick demo of the finished product, and then we'll start coding it out. So I'm on the computer, and I'm going to give you a quick demo of the finished product. Now, what we're going to build here is a newsletter generator that could scale to millions of people and make a lot of money. Now, the main focus is not going to be on this specific idea and kind of the exact project that we build, but more so on how we can make this scalable so we can apply to any AI project that we build. Now on my screen, you see what's referred to as Inngest. This is an orchestration tool that makes it very easy for us to work with AI agents and gives us a lot of really advanced features that allows us to be capable of this scale. Now you can see that I have kind of a function call to my AI backend here where I wanted to generate a newsletter. And when that call comes in, we get all of this logging information automatically handled for us by Inngest, as well as we can go and view every single task that occurred in our kind of run, right, in our function run. So we can see the run that was invoked with this. So we had a topic for our newsletter of AI agent, max articles of 3. We then searched for articles using BrightData, which gives us this ungated web access and can access sources that are typically hard to get to, like Reddit, for example, for up-to-date news. You can see all of the data returned from BrightData is right here. Then we generate the newsletter using AI. So we actually call out to OpenAI, and we can generate that and see the response. And then we're able to save the newsletter, which is right here, and it specifies the file path. And then we have the finalization. And we can see the amount of time it took for every single step. Now, if I just quickly show you a demo of the newsletter, you can see this is what the code looks like. We have this newsletter folder. And if I open it up, let's get the markdown preview. You can see a quick example of the newsletter that was generated. And of course, we can make this much more complicated if we want to. The point is we can actually generate these at scale. So what I just showed you is that we had kind of one newsletter we could generate, but I want to show you what happens if I try to generate 100 at the same time. So I'm going to run this script that I've written, which essentially generates 100 newsletters, or at least requests to generate 100 at the same time. So when I do that, you can see there's all these different topics that have been provided. And if I come here to Ingest now, we can see all of the runs in parallel that are showing up. Now, this is the really interesting thing about Ingest and how we're going to write this code is that for any given run, I can click into it, I can see exactly what's happening in real time, and we can see that by using BrightData here, the articles were searched extremely fast. You can see all of them ran in parallel and kind of worked at scale, and then we're typically just waiting on the generation from our LLM, so that's the longest running task, to actually get the result. But all of this is happening in real time at scale, and again, you can see all of these different results here popping up. Some of them are still running, but generally, we're able to handle any number of requests based on the way that we have orchestrated and written this code, which I think is really interesting. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do now is kind of clear all of this, go into a code editor. We're going to start setting all of this up just so you have an idea what we're going to do. We're going to get all of our keys, all of our access, all of the tools that we need. Then we're going to start setting up the ingest server. Then we're going to deal with BrightData to collect all of the web data that we'll use to generate the newsletters, because what we'll do is we'll search sources like Google as well as Reddit. We can get data from that, and we can use that to give us up-to-date news effectively for the newsletter, which is kind of the whole point. So anyways, let me clear this and then let's start writing some code. So we're going to get into it here, but I just quickly want to touch on the key tools that we're going to use in this video so you can understand why we're able to actually make this agent scale. Now, first, as I mentioned, we're going to use Inngest. This is a platform that allows you to scale the agent and essentially the orchestration and wrap all of the different tasks that are going to be performed into kind of reproducible individual steps. We'll talk more about this later, but you'll see that we can do things like infer the AI, run a particular step, and that's what gave us that nice dashboard where we were able to kind of see into what was going on with our AI agent. Now, in terms of actually producing the content that our agent needs to generate the newsletter, that's where we're going to be using BrightData. Now, BrightData has been a long-term partner of this channel, and they have sponsored this video. They are free to use and to experiment with, like I'm going to show you in this video, and they provide kind of unfiltered, ungated access to the web, which allows you to collect all of the data that's required for AI agents today. This means you can get real-time data from sources that are typically very difficult to scrape and to collect, and BrightData has various different tools you can use. For example, you can extract, search, crawl, navigate. You can do data pipelines, go to web archives. In our case, we're going to be focusing on the searching because we want up-to-date information from a search engine like Google, for example, or like Reddit, but there's all kinds of different services essentially that they provide. So that's what we're going to be using, and the reason why we use BrightData is because it's built to scale. You can send an infinite number of requests to it, and it will automatically scale up and return them to you in parallel, which allows us to build this agent because we don't have that limiting factor of the web search, which you typically would have if you were going to build your own custom web scraper, for example, or use a lot of other services out there that aren't built to scale. Okay, so what we're going to do is go into PyCharm. This is where I'm going to start writing my code, and you'll see that what I've done is I've just opened up a new folder called Newsletter Agent. Now, I prefer to use PyCharm in large Python projects because it is designed specifically for Python. I also have a long-term partnership with them, so you can check out PyCharm for free from the link in the description. Like I said, you can use it for free and check out their Pro subscription, which has a lot of advanced tools, and you'll see in this video why, I prefer to go with an editor like this when working in Python. Okay, so from here, what we're going to do is we're just going to open up the terminal. From the terminal, what I'm going to do inside of this new folder is I'm going to init a new UV project. So I'm going to say UV init dot. That's going to create a few files for us like main.py, pyproject.toml. Now, inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding the various dependencies that we need for this project. So we're going to type UV add and then fast API, ingest with two N's, python-.env. We're going to use this to load in environment variables, uvicorn, and then langchain dash, and then BrightData. They now have a langchain package, which makes it very easy to interface with this tool. So we're going to go ahead and press enter. That's going to install all of the packages that we need. Perfect. Now that we have that, what we're going to do is we're going to start setting up some of the environment variables that we need for this project. So we're going to make a new file here. This file is going to be called .env. Inside of .env, we're going to create two variables. Let me just close these pop-ups here. The first is going to be OpenAI underscore API underscore key. We're going to need this to have an OpenAI API key in order to interface with an AI. Then we're going to have the Bright underscore data underscore API underscore key. And this is going to be our BrightData API key so we can use those web access features. So let's start gathering these keys. The first key that we'll get will be from OpenAI. In order to get that, we're going to go to platform.openai.com/API-keys. You do need to have an account on here, and it will cost a very small amount of money to use the key. Should be literally like a cent. What I'm going to do is go create new key. I'm going to call this Web AI Agent, and then create the key, and I'm going to copy it and not leak it to you, and place it inside of my environment variable file, and then save. So now that we have that, I'm going to go and collect the BrightData API key. So in order to collect the BrightData API key, you will need to create an account on BrightData. I will leave a link below where you can do that for free and get some free credits. And what we'll need to do to get the API key is create a new search zone. Once you create an account here, you very likely will be brought to a page that looks like this. What we'll want to do is go to proxies and scraping. And from here, we're going to press on add, and then we're going to add a SERP API zone. So with BrightData, you can access all of these different proxies like residential proxies, data center, etc., mobile proxies. You can use their unlocker API, which will automatically solve CAPTCHAs and remove things like IP bans and rate limiting that you would get if you do traditional kind of web scraping. You can use their browser API, same thing, for doing kind of remote browser web scraping, so you're not doing it on your own machine. Or you can use the SERP API, which is the main one that we want to use right now, which is going to allow you to scrape search engines. So in this case, we're going to focus on Google. So we're going to press SERP API. For the name, I'm just going to call this SERP API, and we will use this name later, so make sure you name it exactly this. We will turn on the CAPTCHA solver so that it will automatically solve CAPTCHAs if those are presented to us. And I'm going to go with standard for Google Ads, but you can go maximized if you're interested in grabbing the ads that appear. There's also some advanced settings. We don't really need to look at those right now. I am simply going to go and press on add, and then I'm going to go to yes to create the new zone. Once a new zone is created, then I will show you how to get the API key. Okay, so in order to access the API key, it should show it directly here inside of the zone. So you can just copy the key and then take the key and put it right inside of your environment variable file, which I just did right here. Okay, so now that we have the keys, what we can do is start setting up some of the Python files we're going to need for this project. So we're going to have this main.py file. However, I will just clear everything that's inside of it. And let me quickly configure the interpreter here in PyCharm so we no longer get this message. Okay, so the interpreter is configured as we can see down here. I just selected the one for this project. What I'll do now is make the other files that I'm going to need. So I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call this the newsletter_service. Let's type this correctly, .py. I am just going to cancel that. I don't need to add that right now. Then I'm going to go new. I'm going to make another new file, and I'm going to call this custom_types.py for, you guessed it, some custom types that we'll need for this project. I'm then going to make another new file. For this one, I'm going to call this the prompts.py, which is going to include the prompts for our AI model. Okay, and that is about it. We just need one more. And this last one is going to be called run.py. Okay, so now we have the Python files that we need. I believe we have 5 of them, and we can start writing some code. So what we're going to do in order to get this up and running is we're first going to create our own web server that's going to run the ingest kind of code. I know this is going to seem a bit weird until you actually see it in action. Essentially, we're going to have our own server that's going to be served using Fast API, which is going to allow us to have an endpoint that we can hit that will start generating a newsletter. Now, once we create this server, we're going to run it. So we'll just have a normal kind of API running in the background. Then we're going to run the ingest CLI or the ingest dev server. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to create that dashboard that you saw, which is going to handle the flow of requests to our server. So effectively, what's going to happen is we're going to send a request to the ingest dev server. The ingest dev server is then going to take that request and proxy it to our backend, so where we're actually running the AI agent, and it will automatically handle things like retries, caching, tracking how long particular tasks take to run, doing all of the asynchronous kind of scalable stuff for us. So there's kind of these two components that are communicating with each other. We have the ingest dev server, which is open source free. You can run it on your own computer. And then we have our server, and our server is what kind of has the custom code and is generating the newsletter. Then we have a client, and the client is just simply the person or the application that actually wants to request the newsletter to be generated. And I believe if we go over to ingest here, we can see a quick kind of diagram of how this works. So here you go, you can see a quick example of kind of how this works. Essentially, we have some kind of request, right? This request goes to the ingest dev server. The dev server then sends it to our own endpoint, right? Our application, which then sends it to various ingest functions, which are the parts of the application which are reproducible and scalable, as you'll see later on. So that's kind of how the dev server operates. If we scroll down through here, there's a lot more information. You can read more about it. In fact, I have an entire video on ingest, which I will leave on screen now and linked in the description in case you want a lot more detail on it. But it's very useful effectively. So I would highly suggest using it as I'm going to in this video and just following along, and you'll get the hang of kind of how it's set up. And then if you want to do more advanced stuff with it, again, refer to the documentation or the other video that I put on screen. And I'm going to close that for now. Okay, so what we're going to do is go back into our code, and inside of main.py, we're going to start with our imports. So we're going to say import logging. We're going to import UUID, which is a unique identifier, which we need for ingest. We're going to import date time. We're going to say from pathlib import path. We're going to say from fast API import fast API with capital like that. And we're going to import the ingest.fast_API package. We're then going to say from .env import load_.env like so. We're then going to call the load.env function. And what this is going to do is load the values inside of our environment variable file. Okay, now after this, what we're going to do is just set up some basic logging so that we can see results in the console. So we're going to say logging.basic config. And here we're going to say the level is equal to logging.info. This is going to let us see any information statements in the console. We're then going to create a logger, and we're going to say the logger is equal to logging.get logger, and the name of the logger is going to be underscore underscore name underscore underscore, which is the name of this Python module. We then are going to create the ingest client. Okay, so to make the ingest client, we say ingest client is equal to ingest.ingest, and let's just make sure that we import ingest as well. So import ingest like that. Now from here, we are going to put a set of parentheses, and we're going to put the app underscore ID equal to, and then we just need to name this something reasonable. So we're going to go newsletter like that. We're then going to say is underscore production is equal to false because we're not currently running this in production. And we're going to say the serializer is the ingest.pydantic serializer with two parentheses like so. Now the serializer is what's going to essentially convert our data to and from JSON as it goes between our various ingest functions. Don't worry too much about it, but if you're familiar with Pydantic, which is a typing system in Python, that's the one that we're going to use here. Perfect. Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to say path, and we're just going to say newsletters like that. We're going to say .mkdir, and we're going to say exists underscore OK equals true. Now, what this is going to do, and sorry, this is just exists, not exists, is it's going to check if a newsletter directory currently exists inside of our project. If it doesn't, it's going to make a new one so we can store our newsletters there. If it does, then it's not going to make anything. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an ingest function. An ingest function is something that we can trigger to run. And within that function, we can have various different steps that we run to kind of complete the function or complete the task. So what we're going to do is say ingest underscore client. And here we're going to say .create underscore function. We're going to put a set of parentheses, and for the function, we need to give the function an ID. So we're going to say function ID is equal to, and then this can just be a normal string. It doesn't need to be something that's like a variable. So we can say generate newsletter as the ID of the function. This is kind of a human readable name that we'll be able to see inside of the ingest console. And then we're going to have a trigger. Now, the way that ingest works is that from some kind of client, so the client is like a user, for example, you can create an event. Now, these functions that we're going to define here can be triggered when a particular event occurs. So in our case, if we generate a newsletter, that's the event, we want this function to run. And we could have other functions that run when that particular event is generated. So you can have all these different functions and they can be triggered with different events essentially. And multiple functions could run for the same event. In our case, we're setting up something very, very simple where we just have one ingest function, but in more complex applications, you have these events. These events can be triggered by a client or even an ingest function itself. And if that event is triggered, then this function will run. So that's kind of how it works. Rather than directly calling the function, we kind of emit an event. This function then goes, oh, okay, if this event occurred, all right, I'm going to run now because I saw this event. So we're going to say ingest dot trigger event. And then the event is going to be event equal to, and then we're just going to name this newsletter / generate. Okay, and that's the ingest event that we're talking about. Perfect. Now beneath this, we're going to say async define. We're going to put a function. This is going to be generate underscore newsletter. And we're going to say ctx, which is context, is going to be equal to the ingest dot context. Perfect. So then inside of here, we'll just put a quick doc string, and we're just going to say generate AI newsletter from some topic. And then just to make sure that this is running, because we're going to do some debugging, we're just going to log something. So we're going to say logger.info. We're going to put an f string, and we're going to say generating AI newsletter. And then what we're going to do is embed inside of here the ctx.event.id. Again, I know this seems vague because you haven't used ingest before. Trust me, it's very simple once you get the hang of it and we start setting up kind of a larger structure to our code. All right. Now, inside of this function, we're going to have two inner functions. The first function is going to start with an underscore, and we're going to call this search underscore articles. And this is going to be the function that is responsible for using BrightData to actually grab all of the articles and news that we're going to use in our newsletter. So that's the first one. The second one is going to be define underscore save underscore newsletter. And what this is going to do is this is going to, you guessed it, save a newsletter. So it's going to kind of save a new file for us. And these are kind of two steps that we're going to run inside of this particular function. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to go into this custom types file, and I'm just going to define a custom type that we're going to need to use here inside of Inngest. So we're going to say import pydantic, and let's spell pydantic correctly. Then what we're going to do is create a class. We're going to say class newsletter request, and this is going to be the information that we need when we want to create a new newsletter. This is going to inherit from pydantic.base model. And what we're going to do here is say the topic is string, and the max underscore articles is an int, which is equal to 3. All right, so what we're referring to is, okay, we want some topic for the newsletter, and we need the maximum number of articles that we should go and search for. By default, we'll make it 3, but you can make it any amount that you want. Now what I'm going to do is just import those types. So I'm going to say from custom types, import the newsletter request, and we're going to start using this now inside of this ingest function so that we can kind of type the different data that we have correctly. So first things first, we're going to say our request is equal to, and we're going to say newsletter request, and then what we're going to do is put asterisk asterisk ctx.event.data. What this is going to do is take this normal JSON data, and it's going to essentially convert it into this newsletter request pydantic type, which is going to allow us to pass it to the various functions here as needed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to our first function here, and we're going to say request, and then this is going to be newsletter request. So now we know, okay, if you call this function, we're calling it with this newsletter request data, so we can process that inside of the function. For the next function, we're going to have request as well, and this is going to be the newsletter request. And then after this, we're going to have the newsletter underscore text, which is going to come from our model, and we're going to have the articles like this underscore count, which is going to be an int. Now, the reason we're doing this is the number of articles we request versus the number of articles we actually retrieve could be different. So I want to have those as parameters in the function so that when we save the newsletter, and let me make this a little bit larger, we can know essentially how many articles we used to create that. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do just while we're here is I'm going to code out this function, and then we're going to write the logic for actually generating the newsletter, which is a little bit more complex. So in terms of saving the newsletter, we're going to say the timestamp is equal to datetime.datetime. Let's spell that correctly. And this is going to be .now. We're then going to say .str, so string f time, which is like string format time. And inside of here, we're going to put a percent, capital Y, which is year, %m, %d, which is day, underscore, and then we're going to put percent, and then capital H, %, and then capital M, and then %, and then S, which is second. Okay, then we're going to say the safe topic is equal to request dot topics. This will contain the topic that we want for the newsletter, dot replace, and we're going to replace any spaces with hyphens so that we're actually, sorry, not hyphens, underscores, so we're able to use this in like a name, a file name. And we're going to replace any slashes with underscores as well, just to make sure that we have a safe file name. Then we're going to say the file name is equal to, and we're going to say F, and then what we're going to put is the safe underscore topic underscore the, and then inside of parentheses again, the timestamp, and then we're going to put underscore, and then we're going to put again inside of braces string, and then uuid dot uuid4 in parentheses, and then we are going to, at the end of this, put square brackets and then :8, and then .md standing for markdown because that's the file extension we're going to use. The reason why we're putting all of this here is I want to make sure that I have a unique ID attached to the timestamp as well as the topic name, just in case we have two topics that actually end up finishing at the exact same time, so we don't get any error where we accidentally override a file that already exists. We can save ourselves from that by just throwing on a unique ID to the end of our file. I don't care about having the full crazy long UID, so I'm just taking the first 8 characters of a unique identifier that is converted to a string to ensure that we always have a unique file name that's safe to use. Hopefully that makes sense. Then we're going to say the file path is equal to path, and then newsletters, and then we're going to put a slash and file name, which is going to combine these paths together so we know where to save the file. Then we're just going to do a really simple file save, so we're going to say with open file underscore path, we're going to put a W, then we're going to say as F, what we're going to do then is write. So we're going to say f.write, and then we're just going to write in markdown format. So to do that, we're going to put an f, we're going to put a pound sign, a space, and then we're going to put the request.topic, and then we're going to say newsletter \n/n, and then we're going to put the newsletter text here, which should already be in markdown format from our AI. Then we're just going to log something. So we're going to say logger.info, and we're going to say with an f string newsletter saved to, and then we're going to put the file path like so. Then lastly, we're just going to return some information here so that we have the info in ingest. We're going to say the file underscore path is the file path. We're going to say the topic is the request.topic, and we need to make sure we put this in quotation marks. And then we're going to say the articles underscore found, again, needs to be in quotation marks. So articles underscore found is the articles underscore count. Okay, that's it. That's all that we need for this save newsletter function, and we'll use that in a minute. Okay, so let's keep going now through the rest of the function. So we have our request, right? So we've got our newsletter request data. What we're going to do now is we're going to say search underscore results is equal to await ctx.step.run. What this is going to do is run an ingest step. Anything that's a step in ingest is going to be retryable, meaning if it fails, it will automatically retry the number of times that we specify. It also will be traceable, meaning we can see the result of that step. So this is how ingest is kind of set up. You can have an overall function, and then within that function, you can have these different steps that you run, and those steps give you that observability into the AI application. So the first step, we're going to call this search-articles, so that we put the name as the first parameter. And then we have to put the function that we want to call. So in this case, I'm going to say lambda, and then I'm going to put underscore search articles, and I'm going to pass request as the parameter to this function. Now what I'm doing is I need to put a callable function as the second argument to this step. So because I want to pass a parameter to search articles of request, which is this right here, I simply wrap this function call in a lambda, which makes this callable so that this is the correct format for this function call essentially. Might seem a little bit weird, but that's necessary the way that we're calling this function. If the function didn't have any parameters, I would just write the name of the function, but because it has a parameter, I put it in a lambda. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say newsletter underscore text is equal to, and actually for now, I'm just going to make this an empty string, but we will call a function here that will generate the newsletter. And then lastly, we're going to say result is equal to await ctx.step.run. This step is going to be called save-newsletter. So effectively, we're going to have three steps. The first is going to search for all of the data we need with BrightData. The second is going to generate the newsletter text based on that data. And the third is going to save the newsletter using our save newsletter function. So same thing, we're going to say lambda and then underscore save newsletter. And then we're going to pass our data. So we're going to pass our request and then our newsletter text. I don't know why we have all of this here. And then we're just going to pass a 1 as the articles count, but we could actually adjust this later on, which we likely will. And then lastly, we're going to return the result. Okay, so I know this function is not completely finished yet because we need to write some other code, but effectively what we're going to do is have these three steps that we're going to be running. Again, first searching, second generating the text using AI, and the third having the result saved to a file. And then we're going to return all of that from this function. Now, the last step here is we need to serve this function using fast API and ingest. So to do that, we're going to say app is equal to fast API, and we're just going to give this a title. So we're going to say title is equal to newsletter API. We then are going to say ingest.fast underscore API dot serve, and we're going to serve the app, the ingest client, and then we need to put inside of a list here the ingest functions that we have. So we're going to say generate newsletter like that so that we serve this function. Then we're going to put if underscore underscore name underscore underscore is equal to underscore underscore main underscore underscore. We're going to import Uvicorn, and we're going to say uvicorn.run, and then this is going to be app, and then host is equal to 0.0.0.0. So just run on all available IPs essentially. And then we're going to say port is equal to 8000. Okay, so what this is going to do is essentially run our app using Unicorn, which is a lightweight web server in Python. It's going to run our fast API application, which is then connected to Inngest. Inngest is now going to serve this function. And then when we start running everything, which I will show you in a second, this function will essentially be ready to go, and we could call it and test it out and make sure that it works. Okay, so before we go any further, what we're going to do is just run all of this code to just make sure that it actually spins up correctly. We can't really test it yet, but we can at least make sure that it doesn't have any errors. And then we're going to move on to the next stage, which is collecting the data and invoking the AI, right? And that's where it gets more interesting. So in order to run this application, there's two things we need to run. The first is our server, so the one we just wrote, main.py, and the second is the ingest CLI, or the ingest dev server, which I'll show you in a second. So what we're going to do is type uv run and then main.py. This is going to run our fast API server, and you can see that's running on port 8000. Next, we're going to open a different terminal instance, and we're going to run the following command, which is npx ingest -CLI and then dev. Now, when we run this, it's going to start installing Inngest, so just make sure you type yes to install it, and then you should see that it starts running like this. And you'll see that it's running on port 8288. What you can do is simply open this, and you should see that it brings you to a page that looks like this, and you're viewing kind of the ingest dev server, which it says right here, which is where we can test everything and make sure that it's working. Now from here, what we're going to do is go to apps, and we want to make sure that we see an app registered here that is our server. Okay, so you can see we have localhost port 8000 running, so we have our application on localhost port 8000, sorry, and then we have the ingest dev server. So both of these are now running. What we could now do is send a request to the dev server, which will then forward it over to our server, which would then allow us to generate the newsletter. Now, obviously, not all of that is finished right now, but you get the idea. So that's how it would work. So if I wanted to test this right now, what I can do is I can go to runs, I can go to send test event, and then I could just do kind of a mock test event that would trigger the ingest function. So if we have a look here at our function, the event is newsletter/generate, so let's copy that. Okay, so we're going to go here. Now the data that we're going to be looking to accept is a topic. So let's do a topic of like AI agent, for example. And then if I send this event, you can see that the function is running. It gives us the run. Now we have an error here because save newsletter returned unserialized data. That's fine. We can fix that later, but hopefully you get the idea. Okay, so essentially it ran. We were able to see the function run. And now it's going to keep retrying this last step here because that's how ingest is set up. So I can simply cancel this and then go back. So that means everything is working. It's all set up. We're able to actually trigger the function to run, and we need to write the rest of the code now. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go into our newsletter service, and we're going to start writing this service in order to actually generate the data and then generate the newsletter with AI. So we're going to start with our imports. We're going to import OS. We're going to import async IO. We're going to import concurrent dot futures. We are then going to say from .env import load.env. We're going to say from ingest.experimental import AI. And we're going to say from langchain underscore BrightData import the BrightData SERP. Okay, this is one of the various tools we can use. You can see if I start typing here, there's a bunch of other ones we can use as well, like web scraper, unlocker, API, etc. In this case, we're just using the SERP. Okay, we're then going to call load.env again, just to make sure we load in the environment variables that we need. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a class. We're going to say class newsletter service. From here, we're going to start writing some methods. So the first method we're going to write, we're going to say define, and this is going to be underscore search underscore web underscore blocking. We're going to take in self topic, which is a string, and max underscore articles, which is an int, and this is going to return a string. Then inside of here, this is where we're actually going to perform the search with BrightData, but before we do that, I'm just going to write the other functions or methods that we need. The next is going to be async define, and this is going to be search underscore web underscore simple. We're going to take in self topic, which is a string, and then same thing, max articles int, and we're going to return a string. Same thing for now, I'm just going to pass, and we'll write the implementation of this later. The reason why I need these two methods is this method will actually perform the search. This is going to allow me to do it asynchronously and concurrently so that I can do multiple searches at the exact same time without being blocked by my thread here in Python. I'm then going to say async define generate newsletter. This is going to take in self. It's going to take in ctx topic, which is a string, and search underscore results, which are a string as well. And then it's going to return a string, which is going to be the completed newsletter. Okay, and then same thing for now, we are going to pass, and now we're going to start actually implementing these methods. Okay, so inside of our search web blocking, we're going to start with a try. First, we're just going to put a print statement so we can see what's going on. And for the print, we're going to say searching with BrightData SERP for, and then we're going to put what we're actually searching for. In this case, I'm just going to go comma, and I'm going to put topic. Okay, so we can see what it is that we're searching. We're then going to invoke the SERP tool. So we're going to say SERP tool is equal to BrightData SERP. And we have a lot of options that we can specify here for the SERP tool to run. So the first is we need the BrightData API key. So we're going to say BrightData underscore API underscore key is equal to os.getEnv. And we're going to get the bright underscore data underscore API underscore key, which we defined inside of our environment variable file right here. Okay, so we're going to get that key. We're then going to specify the search engine that we want to use here is going to be equal to Google. We're then going to say the country is equal to US. We're going to say the language is equal to English. We're then going to say the results is equal to the max articles. And we're going to say parse results equals true. Now, this is an interesting part about how the SERP works from BrightData. It can actually automatically parse all of the results that it gets from the normal HTML response from Google into JSON format, or in our case, a Python dictionary. That's going to be a lot easier for us to work with. So make sure you enable this as true so that it automatically parses the results for you. If you wanted the raw data not parsed, then you would make this false. Okay, there's a lot of other values you can pass here to use this search engine API. For example, you can use a different search engine like Bing, right? You can use a different country. You can target a city. You can do all kinds of stuff and look at all the results. And it will give you results extremely quickly. We're talking about a few seconds at most, and give you a ton of results that you can parse through. For example, you can look at news, you can look at images, you can look at videos, you can look at just normal search results. And I'm going to show you how we filter through that in a second. So now that we have the tool, we're going to make a search result. So I'm going to say search query is equal to, and then I'm going to say F. And what I'm going to do is just take the topic, and I'm going to say news recent developments. So if they search for like AI agent, for example, we're going to do like AI agent news recent developments so that we find all of the news related to that for our search. And we could do more advanced searches, obviously, but in this case, this is just the one that I will use. Then we're going to say the results are equal to the SERP underscore tool. And rather than .search, this is going to be .invoke. This is as easy as it is to use this tool. I simply invoke this, and what it's going to do is scalably go to, in this case, Google, grab all of the different results based on the max articles that we provided here, and then give it to us in a parsed JSON format, which we can then use and pass to our agent. So I'm going to do a print statement, and I'm going to say print f string like this, and then got, let's do this, got results for, and then we're going to put the topic like that. And now we're going to go and we're just going to extract the results that we need. Now this generates a ton of different results, and I don't want all of the results, because if I have all of the results, then that's going to be too many tokens to pass to my AI agent. So I'm just going to get the results that are essentially relevant to me. So I'm going to say if is instance, and this is going to be results dictionary and organic. So these are results that are not sponsored, are in results. What I'm going to do is say the essential underscore results is equal to a list, and this is going to be, essential results. That's good. I'm going to say for result in results, and then I'm going to look in the organic portion of the results, and I'm going to go up to just the max articles. So I'm going to say max articles. Then what I'm going to do is say essential underscore results dot append, and I'm just going to append a simplified version of the result because, again, I don't need everything. So I'm going to say title is equal to result dot get So let's do this properly. And then title. And if we don't have that, we'll just have an empty string. Then we're going to have the description. And the description is going to be the result.get. And then description and an empty string. And then we're going to have the source. And the source is going to be the result.get, the source, and then if we don't have a source, an empty string. Now, what I'm effectively doing is, because there's so many results that BrightData is going to return here, I'm just filtering through them, right? So if you want to see what the raw response looks like, you can just print out all of the results and you can see what's interesting to you. In my case, I just care about the organic results. So that's what I'm doing, right? I'm looking in the organic results. I'm just looking at the number of articles I specified. And for each result that I'm having a look at, the only thing I'm grabbing is the title, description, and source, even though there's a lot more information associated with it that in this case I just don't need, because I don't want to overload my LLM with tokens when I don't need that. So then what I'm going to do is just tab back one. So we're outside of the for loop here, and I'm going to return the following, which is going to be a string, and the string is going to be query. The query is going to be the topic that was provided, and the results are going to be the essential results. And I'm just returning a string so that I can pass that directly to my LLM. I then am going to just have an if statement here, and I'm simply going to return the string of results, which will just be this if for some reason this is not a dictionary. Otherwise, down here, I'm going to have an except, and I'm going to say accept exception as E, and then I'm just going to return an empty string, and I'm going to print out the exception if for some reason an error occurred. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting a simple try statement, right? I'm saying, okay, I'm going to start, searching with BrightData. I set up my SERP tool. I invoke the search, so I get all these results. I then just simply parse through the results, get the information that I need, and return that. And if there's an error, I just print out the error and then return nothing because we didn't get any results. Okay. So now what we need to do is be able to call this, asynchronously, so that we can actually run this multiple times without being blocked. I'm not going to explain this too much in depth because it's a little bit advanced, but I'm going to use async.io to do this. So I'm going to say loop is equal to async.io.get event loop. I'm then going to say with concurrent, and this is going to be .futures.thread pool executor as executor. For the thread pool executor, I'm going to say the max workers is equal to 10. It doesn't really matter how many you put here, but the more you put, essentially, the faster this is going to execute. What I'm effectively saying with this is that I want to run 10 threads at the same time. So if we put more, then it should run more concurrently, but 10 is kind of fine for what we need here. And then what I'm going to do is say result is equal to await, and then loop.run in executor. And inside of here, I'm going to use the executor, and I'm going to call the function self.search web blocking, and then I'm going to pass these two parameters, topic and max articles. Now, I know that this is confusing, and a lot of you probably don't know what this is doing. Effectively, what this is doing is just ensuring that we are going to be able to run all of these search operations effectively at the same time without stalling or waiting for a search to return. The reason for this is that if I don't do this, I'll constantly be waiting for one of the search results to come back to me. So let's say a search takes 5 seconds and I need to do 100 searches. My application is going to take 500 seconds to run. When really, if every search takes 5 seconds, I should just trigger every single search right away. And then I just wait 5 seconds, and then all of the searches are finished and I can get the results. That's effectively what this loop is going to do for us right here, allow us to run this concurrently using the thread pool executor, which again is a bit beyond the scope of this tutorial. But it's important because if you don't have this, then you're going to have this kind of hanging, delaying program. So I encourage you, if this is interesting to you, look into asynchronous programming. You can actually just plug this into ChatGPT and ask it what's going on. But that's effectively kind of what we're doing here. So that should allow us to actually generate the search results. And what we'll do is go back into main and we'll kind of test this before we move forward with the AI component. So what we can do now is we can fill in this search articles function. And to do that, we're going to import the newsletter service. So we're going to say from newsletter service, import, and actually, do we want to do that? No, I think we can just import newsletter service like that. And actually, I just realized when I was looking at these that these can be class methods. So I'm just going to decorate these with the @class method decorator. And I'm going to change self to simply be CLS here. And then I'm going to do the same thing in search web simple. So I'm going to say @class method, and then this is going to be CLS. And I'm going to change this to say CLS where we have self, because I don't actually need access to the instance. I just need access to the class. And then for my generate newsletter function, I'm just going to make this a static method, because similarly, I don't actually need access to the instance. So I'm just going to remove that there just to make this a little bit cleaner code. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to go back to main. I've imported the newsletter service. And what I'm going to do now is from my search articles, I'm going to return await. And then this is going to be newsletter service dot, and this is going to be search underscore web underscore simple. And actually, I need to change the import again. Sorry. So I'm going to say from newsletter service, import the newsletter service. And then this needs to be the name of the class. So newsletter service dot search web simple. And then for searching the web, all we're going to do is pass the request dot topic and the request dot max articles. And I think that should be okay. Let's see why it's highlighting here. Okay, just because it's shadowing, that's fine. And I think that's good for this particular function. So now that we've done that, what we can do is we can run the code. So I'm just going to go to my application here. I'm going to shut it down and I'm going to restart it. I can just leave the ingest dev server running. I don't need to stop this. It can just run indefinitely. And I'm going to go now to ingest. I'm going to refresh. Let's just make sure that our application is synced. It is. And what I'm going to do is trigger a test run again. So I'm going to go send test event, and same thing. We're going to have to go newsletter / generate. For the data, let's just provide a topic of, I don't know, AI agents, and let's send the event. And now what I want to do is look at the event and see if the search articles worked. And it says no search results for AI agent found. Try modifying your search parameters. Okay, so I'm not sure why we got that. Let me have a look into it. Okay, so I was just having a look at this here, and the issue that we're running into is that for the BrightData tool, it's going to look for a zone called SERP, so SERP. So we need to actually have the zone in BrightData called SERP exactly, not anything else. So what I did is I just created a new zone called SERP, and deleted the other one. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is create this SERP zone inside of BrightData. So again, just do the exact same thing we did before. Go to add, SERP API, call this SERP. You shouldn't already have a name, right? So it's called this exactly. Everything else will be the exact same, and you should be good to go. And then same thing for the API key. If it's changed, you just copy the new one and put it in the environment variable file. So now that we have this, if we go back and we try running again, it should work. So actually, let's go back to ingest and let's refresh. And let's go to send test event. And let's do the same thing. So this is going to be newsletter / generate. And then for the data, we're going to go topic and then AI agent, and then send the event. And let's see if it searches this time. Okay, and notice that this time we get a ton of different results popping up, which means the search was working properly, right? We could see all of that data. And if we go and we want to look into the data specifically, we can do that. We can just make this full screen, and we can see, in this case, we have like general, search engine. As we scroll down, we have the topics, agentic AI, we get the title, right? We get the description, we get all the information, the sources, and we're going to start using that now in the call to our LLM. So the search is good. Perfect. So I'm just going to cancel that one because, we're getting an error on the return just because we haven't finished coding this yet. And we're going to go back to the code and continue. Okay, so inside of our newsletter service, the next function we want to write is going to be the generate newsletter function. And to generate the newsletter, we essentially just need to call the AI model with a particular prompt. So actually, let's go to prompts.py. And what I'm going to do is just copy in a custom prompt that I have. And this prompt will be available from the link in the description where I have all of the code via GitHub. So I'm just going to paste this. We have a newsletter prompt, very simple. You're a professional newsletter writer specializing in AI and technology content. Create a newsletter about this topic using these articles, provide the articles, and we provide some instructions like write a professional newsletter, here's the information, keep it concise and engaging, use markdown formatting. That's it. That's our prompt inside of prompts.py. So now we're going to go to the newsletter service. From the newsletter service, we're going to import these prompts because we're going to use them here. So we're going to say from prompts, import, and then this is going to be the newsletter system prompt, as well as the get newsletter prompt like so. Okay, so now that we have the prompts, we can use them to invoke the AI model. So we're going to go into this function, and we're going to say the prompt is equal to get newsletter prompt, and we're going to pass the topic and the search results. Okay, then we're going to say the OpenAI underscore API underscore key is equal to os.getEnv OpenAI API key. We're going to say the adapter is equal to ai.openai.adapter. This is coming from Inngest. We're going to say the auth underscore key is equal to the OpenAI API key. And we're going to say the model is equal to, and you can put whatever you want here, but I'm going to use GPT-4o mini because it's pretty cheap and it is pretty fast. Okay, then we're going to say the response is equal to await ctx.step.ai.infer. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to use Inngest to send the request to OpenAI, and it will automatically handle anything like rate limiting or the tokens being too large for us automatically. So that's why we're using this rather than using like LangChain or the OpenAI package. We just use Inngest and it can handle sending that call. You also could do this with something like Claude, for example, right? Or another model, or even Ollama, a local model, but in our case, we're just using OpenAI. So from here, I need to put a name. So I'm going to say generate newsletter content, kind of like a human readable step name. I'm going to say the adapter is equal to, and this is going to be the adapter that we wrote. And we're going to say the body is equal to, and this is going to be the information we want to send to our model. So we're going to say the max tokens is equal to, and I'm going to go with 2,500. That's the maximum output length I want. I'm going to put the temperature, and this is going to be equal to 0.6. The higher temperature you go, the more random the model will be. So I want this to be kind of creative and unique because it's generating a newsletter. I'm then going to go messages, and this is what the model is actually going to respond to. And for the messages, I'm going to have a list, and I'm going to have two messages. The first is going to be role system. This is a system message that it will not directly reply to, but that it will use to know kind of how to reply in the future. And this is going to be the newsletter system prompt. Then we're going to have the custom or the user message, sorry. So we're going to say role user, and this is the one it will actually reply to. And this is going to be content, and then the prompt that we generated right here. Okay, so that's actually going to generate the response for us. And then what we're going to do is we're going to return the response. But to get the actual response, we need to reference choices, 0, and then messages, and then content, and then dot strip. Okay, so when we do that, it's going to strip away any of the white space characters for us, give us the actual content of the message that it generated, and we'll have access to that now from this function when we call it. Okay, so now that that's there, we simply just need to use this from main.py. So we're going to go to main.py. We have our search results, and now we're going to go to the newsletter text step, and we're actually going to call this generator. So we're going to say await, and then newsletter service. So let's actually do this, newsletter service dot generate newsletter. We're going to pass the CTX, the request dot topic, and our search results from the previous step. Okay, so let's make this a little bit larger so we can see it. And you'll notice, right, that we have newsletter text. Okay, so wait, newsletter service dot generate newsletter, pass the context, pass the topic, and pass the search results. Okay, so that's all good. And then what I'm just going to quickly do is fix something in this function right here where we're saving the newsletter, where I just convert my file path here to a string because that was causing some problems previously, and I just want to quickly fix that up. So effectively now we're going to search, right? So get the results from BrightData. We're then going to pass that to the newsletter generator. It's going to generate that for us, and then we're going to generate the result and save that as a newsletter, and we'll have that saved inside of the file here. In fact, you can see we had a bunch of newsletters saved already. However, there wouldn't be anything there yet because we didn't yet have the AI making them. So I'm just going to delete these for now. So let's delete. Okay. And now let's rerun our server, and let's test this out and see if we can get it to work. So I'm going to go uv run main.py. We'll leave again the ingest dev server running. Let's go back here. Let's go to send test event. Let's go to newsletter / generate. For the data, we're going to pass the topic, and let's go with cats or something. Okay, and let's send the event. And let's see if we look at the runs, if this is working now. Okay, events, runs, there we go. We can see it's running. We can see search happened extremely fast. In this case, 3.2 seconds to run. We get the results, and then it's giving me an issue here saying AI.infer got an unexpected keyword adapter. So I think we just spelled adapter incorrectly. So let's just fix the spelling. So let's go to newsletter service, and yes, adapter. Let's fix the spelling of that. Let's rerun our server so that the change takes place. Let's refresh the ingest server. Okay, and let's go to send test event. Same thing. Let's go newsletter generate. Okay, and then for the data, we're going to go topic cats, send event. And let's see now if this runs and if we get any problems or if it's able to generate the newsletter for us. Okay, so we can see it searched extremely fast, and now we're waiting for this generate newsletter step to complete. So let's see when we get that. This usually does take the longest because it is relying on OpenAI to get the response, which can be slow depending on how many tokens we pass it effectively. Okay, so we're still waiting. Hopefully this gives us a response here in a second so we can see what it is. Okay, so it looks like we did get a response. If we come down here, you can see that we get kind of the whole newsletter generated. And then again, we're getting this issue in finalization where it's saying something like messages, like some key does not exist. So let's just quickly go fix that mistake. So we say choices, 0, and then messages, when this should just say message, and then content, and that should fix that up for us. So let's, again, shut this down, restart, go back to ingest. Let's send another test event. This hopefully will be the last one. So newsletter / generate, and then data, topic. Let's go with dogs this time. Okay, send the event. Let's wait for this to run, and let's see now if this works. Okay, so this time, of course, we got a content length exceeded error because we passed too many tokens to the model. So I guess we got too much information from BrightData there when we sent that in. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to run this again with a different search query, and we'll test it to see if we can fix that. So newsletter / generate, and then data, and we're going to go topic cats. So this is something we could code in to make sure that we don't pass too many characters. However, that's going to be a little bit complex right now. So I'm just going to leave that as like a potential bug that could occur. Now, I just am doing this with cats this time. So let's see if when we generate the newsletter, we don't get an error and this works. Okay, and for the first time, we see completed. If I go generate newsletter, you can see that it generated that for me. I went to save newsletter, looks like that worked. And if we go back here to the newsletters folder, we can see that we have a cat newsletter saved. And it has emojis, it's in Markdown, and everything is good. Cool, so that means that this is working. Now, all of this is great, but I want to show you how we can invoke this code from code. So rather than having to do it manually from the Inngest dev server there, I want to show you how we could do it from a request, for example, in Python, so you could use this from your own custom front end or something along those lines. So the easiest way to do this is we're just going to go into the run.py file, and I'm just going to copy in some content that I'm going to leave available from the link in the description because I don't want to write all of it manually because a lot of it is just these kind of random topic ideas as you see inside of here. Okay, so what I've done is I've imported async.io, random, ingest, and then .env. You can see we have a bunch of random topics that we're going to write newsletters about. And then what I've done is written a function called send request. What this does is it generates a random choice from the list of topics. It then generates an event in ingest. Notice the event is exactly the event type that we've been generating ourselves. We then try to send this request. So we say client.send, and by saying client.send, we're going to use the ingest client, which we've defined right here. And we just specify what app we want to send this request to. We then say tasks is equal to, and then we send this request 100 times effectively, and just gather the tasks with async.io so they run at the same time. So a very simple script that effectively just sends 100 different requests to ingest so that we can test to make sure this app is scaling and working properly. And again, we just simply make an event. When that event occurs, it triggers the function to run, and then it uses BrightData, collects all the information very quickly for us, passes it to the AI model, and then generates the newsletter. So just to ensure that this is going to work and the scalability is there, I'm going to go uv run and then run.py. When we do that, it's going to send all of these requests. And then to verify that, we can go to Inngest and we should see all of the requests popping up in our dashboard here. We can wait a few seconds, probably like 20, 30 seconds, and we should start populating all of the newsletters. And then we can have a look at them and make sure that they actually are valid. Okay, and you can see that a bunch of them are popping up as completed now as I'm kind of sitting on this page. We can click into them. We can see whatever has occurred, right? And just check the status of all of these different events. And in this case, there was an error in this one because the content length was exceeded. So that could happen, right? That's fine. That's also why we have this observability tool, so we can check if a mistake actually happens and we can fix that, revert it, etc. And with Inngest, there's a lot of other features you can do for example, caching responses and like rate limiting and retrying. I haven't implemented that yet. That's something I'll leave to you if you want to look up the documentation later. So if we go now to our code, so let's go here and we go to the newsletters folder. We'll see there's a bunch of newsletters. And if I click through them, you can see we have a bunch. So we have, climate change, crypto, energy, EV, hydrogen, whatever, right? And you get all of these different ones popping up that we generated, as well as all of the different sources where it found this information. Boom. So there you go, guys. That is pretty much going to wrap up this video. That was essentially making a scalable AI agent that is connected to the web. There was a lot of interesting components and features that I showed you there. And with this knowledge, you should be able to extrapolate this and create some really interesting applications that actually scale and work in a production setting. Of course, there's a lot more to go over to really get this pushed out to production, like the deployment side of things. If you want a video on that, then definitely let me know. I'd be happy to make that in the future. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.